The First Draw, a short story by A.T. Morales. The rain had stopped and the early morning sun was beginning to pierce the gray cloud cover. Wet clothing and hunger provided a restless night as the long line of archers battled not only fatigue from a poor night's sleep, but fear. Fear of dying, fear of failing the man next to them. On the brink of combat, two large armies stared each other down like crouched tigers waiting to pounce. Colorful banners, flags flapped quietly in the wind, the silence only broken by the occasional commanding shout amongst the ranks, or the weary soldier losing control and emptying the contents of his stomach on the battlefield. Gerald stood quietly on the line, peering across the field at the heavily armored infantry preparing their assault. Large war horses danced anxiously as they moved into their ranks, nearly touching the haunches of the mount next to them. Their skilled riders controlled the beast with one hand on the reins while the other grasped a sharp lance. Long shafts of wood with barbed metal tips that, when wielded skillfully, could skewer three armed men. Thinking of the lances, Gerald removed an arrow from his heavy leather quiver. The tip of the bodkin looked like a lance, as sharp and pointy as a stiletto, able to penetrate the highest quality armor. A broadsword or broadhead arrow created a much larger wound channel, but could not penetrate the modern metal armor crafted by the finest of smiths. Perhaps, Gerald thought, a creative smith of neutral party invented the theory of the bodkin and the lance, one destructive device for each side of the war. It gives both sides an advantage and keeps the blacksmith in business. A quality craftsman could greatly benefit from a war, one they wouldn't even have to wield a sword in. Crafting quality weapons and repairing damaged armor during a campaign could bring steady work for decades. Gerald could not seem to find himself as a craftsman. He possessed a large frame to swing a hammer, but preferred to use his size to draw the full weight of a longbow. Having shot for years, he built up the strength to maintain a sustained rate of fire, and the calloused tips of his fingers allowed the full weight of the waxed bowstring to roll off hundreds of times a day. He placed the bodkin arrow across the top of his longbow. The freshly oiled yew wood glistened in the rising sunlight. As he nocked the arrow, he realized how bad his hands were shaken, and so did his mentor. "Gerald," Marcus said, giggling, remembering his first war and how a large portion of the battle was against himself. "You must calm your nerves, boy. They're just like any other targets you hit before, except if you miss too much, these targets will kill you." "Comforting thoughts, sir," Gerald replied smartly. "I'm just teasing you, trying to make light." Marcus stopped laughing and looked Gerald in the eyes, squaring his shoulders with his hands. Gerald stared back, his eyes deep and dark. The look had no doubt stared down many armies in the past. Their edges were worn with stress that a position of leadership can bring. Although Marcus had never desired to promote, he has trained green archers for nearly a score of years. "Look, boy, there's no doubt the knights and men-at-arms across that field look scary, but I assure you, they are men. Men just like you and I. Aim true, breathe and release, and they will drop." Gerald nodded. "I can do this." "Yes, you can," Marcus replied in a near whisper. "And don't stop," his voice elevated. "Drop as many of those bastards as you can." "Ready your arrows," shouted the section leader. Gerald reseated his arrow, this time with a steady hand. His calloused fingertips slid up and down the wax string in one final inspection. This arrow would be the first arrow he will have shot in combat. His first attempt to take another human life, and still didn't know the full reason of the war. Did the enemy really hate him and his countrymen, or were they just doing their job? Did his prey have a family waiting at home, keeping the fire warm and the children in line until his return? Or maybe a beautiful lady they had tried to court into marriage, similar to Lisa that Gerald had left behind. Oh, he missed the smell of gardenia and rose oil she used to spot her neck with. He could always catch a quick scent before she pushed him away when he tried to kiss her neck. He remembered the soft touch of her hands as they walked through the family's wheat fields, never wanting to let go, long past the setting sun. She used to shout encouragements when Gerald strung his bow and launched arrows the full length of the fields. "Good shot, Gerald." "Just a little to the left, Gerald." He could still hear her voice. She would read her studies out loud when preparing for an exam. She said it helped her remember, but Gerald always thought it was another attempt to lure him into a passionate frenzy, teasing him before she got called away to help transcribe the next text in the keep. Gerald would return from this war, and he would ask Lisa's father for her hand in marriage. How could he say no to a war hero? A soldier returns from combat with the spoils he earned, wealthy and ready to settle down. The young archer looked down the line at his fellow soldiers. He relied on them to take down the enemy, to shoot true and fast, and when the time came, drop their bows and fight up close and personal. Gerald always heard his own blood pounding and stir in his head as excitement and fear rose, but never heard the blood of the enemy splash onto the ground, wetting the soil like the rain. His mentor told him to keep firing and never give up. The other archers relied on him as well, and the knights, the fighters, the true heroes, they needed Gerald to thin the lines, cause havoc, and slow the horse's charge. 1,000-pound beast did not stop easily. Gerald raised his head up from his bow, sweat trickling down his brow as he again gazed across the field at the approaching enemy. He picked his target, a well-armored knight atop a gray warhorse. The lance was held high with pride as a bright yellow and blue banner flowed like silk behind him. It was a beautiful scene. How the banner stayed clean amongst the flying mud kicked up from the trampling hooves surprised Gerald, but it did not matter. That was about to change. Gerald was going to make it home, and so were his fellow soldiers. "I will see you soon, my love," he whispered. Pulling back his string, Gerald's muscles easily fought against the full draw of a 6-foot longbow. He again caught sight of his first target and released.